Charlotte. Hey, Charlotte.
Everything.
Hey, Danny.
Hey, how are you, honey?
I'm good. I won't be here next Wednesday.
Where are you gonna go?
I'm having surgery.
Oh.
Elective. Elective.
Elective?
Elective surgery. Yeah.
Are we tucking and tightening?
No, I'm having my implants exchanged. They're like 20 years old, so time for new ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a little tucking and tightening while I'm out.
16.
All right.
Hey, that's the good life now. I can afford it, not spending all that money on drugs. I can buy things like Mercedes. I just bought a car too.
Oh, what'd you get?
Mercedes.
Oh, you go, girl. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Anybody's got a Mercedes needs new boobs.
That's right.
New boobs and a Mercedes go together.
Don't they? Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Love the hat.
Thank you. Willie, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great.
All right. Did I ever send you what you put on the flyer for the?
Huh?
Did I ever send you what to put on the flyer?
Go. You did. That's it.
Okay.
Get that
I'll
to
try
me.
to
I'll have
remember.
it
Yeah.
made in today.
Yeah, we need to spread it around different
Yeah.
clubs.
Well, we'll get people there.
Oh, yeah.
You're ringing the bell.
I got some people from Europe are going to try to do it live. Lynn, what's up?
Danny, you're looking pretty good in your attire.
All right.
Say Danny looks like a tire. Hey, right, man. Hey, you're right.
And we have Greg.
What's going on, Lynn? What's happened, sister?
I didn't know this was tonight. It's like a real deal.
Oh, it's a real deal.
Episodes.
Or if you.
What's up, Greg?
timed it to where the day that Ricky was born,
Okay.
is that the first one?
Watching it.
Yeah.
And then I show up and I'm like.
Is the actual day that Lucille Ball had her C-section.
We do that.
But they couldn't say that she was pregnant. They had to say she was expecting.
I know, I've already watched 2 weeks.
Because you could say pregnant on there.
My life. This one.
This is without a doubt. People like, don't make his ego all big.
No, this is 10. No, I'm just telling you the truth.
I know.
No, that's allowed. Don't worry about it.
No, let me tell you.
We need a little more ego.
He's very assured of himself. I think he needs to be loosened up.
Was step 1, 2, 3, it's just 1, 2. We weren't even to 3.
It's good saying when I got knocked out.
Yeah, yeah. How are you doing?
This is her first meeting back from.
All right, I'll call you.
So are you and Jerry?
Are you in there, Greg? Can you hear now, Greg?
I can hear.
All right, buddy. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are things over there?
Pretty good. Pretty
Warming
good.
up?
Oh, yeah. It's 80, 82 today.
Yeah. Hey,
Hey,
honey. Good seeing
How
you.
are-
Haven't seen you in forever.
How are you?
Good.
It's good to see you.
Just this day.
Yeah.
Because of this.
Yeah.
Well, I walked in and I was like, where's the meeting? I
Yeah.
know. I sat out there and was like, oh, no, it's in there. I left and he was like, it's in the back room.
Well, good to see you, both of you. You know, we've gone good high school.
Oh, really? Yeah. I'm gonna start trying to come to the plate meetings again.
Okay, good. Yeah, you too. 7 o'clock.
Okay, I'm meeting with Teresa at like 5:45.
Let's see here.
We need you there. Good there.
You
So,
go.
we- boy, everybody's got kids there now at school.
Hopefully I won't have them if I meet with
Speaker.
Teresa.
Okay. Well, do whatever you need to do.
Oh, good. Here's Deb. I can't figure this out.
I forget.
Don't break it, man. I'm trying to get it to where it's made.
Every week I'm like, oh, yeah, that's not good. It's like starting over. Okay.
Hey, how are you? I'm good. Are you set to see? You all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Walk out the front door. And the brick, like, on top of it. Like that.
Got an inch of rain last night. By noon, I was working in my yard. Actually, it was all this morning. From about 4.
And it's gonna be all right, so it's just material crap, right? Hey, do you know if they? I got about it now.
I got a rain. I've always said.
So you fill the bag.
Oh, yeah.
Join. Yeah, I'm dropping mine. Yeah. No. Good, how are you? Deteriorated. They'll come in and grind that back in like I got you.
Got Robin drawer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, yeah. They really need to be guilty.
I didn't know that. I honestly think they're on. And,
It'll work.
just probably one of the epoxy glue.
Really, what you doing?
How are you?
Watch your sissy today.
Oh, good. I can get my house by 10 o'clock. I won't have that. I know it's much. I thought, well, the cat called the name and she comes walking around the store. I know. Okay, well, you know where I go there. Yeah. All right. Exactly. Where you sitting at? Down there? Well, I'm gonna come down and enjoy. I'm too close to Danny. He'll be pointing me out.
Find you wherever you are. So how'd you do it then?
It's magic.
I know it's magic because I can't get it. I was over
You
there.
just had to minimize. Just need to click on that. Like,
Wait a minute.
like you had it like that, right?
Well, I had it like that because I was trying to get it to the way you had it. Hey, Johnny, how you doing, pal?
Hey, Shannon.
I'm doing good, Danny. Thanks.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Where is
Are you there? Hey.
who we
Yeah,
missing
I can
there?
hear you now.
Tom Adams and Dan.
Missing Tom.
Where's Tom at?
I'll tell you.
He said he's gonna be here.
All right.
My wife makes me those. Yeah, they're, I don't know what they are. She makes it for me. Like, I got like 150 of them. She sit around, be like, okay, hold out your arm. That fit? Yep. Yeah, I love them. I absolutely love them.
Okay, it's lowercase w, capital U, lowercase e, capital S, 8, and then lowercase s. Okay. Oh. Okay. Lowercase w, capital U.
Thank you.
Lowercase e, capital S,
Well, then when you try to think about it, oh, no. Trying to wake up.
and then lowercase s.
I'm trying to wake up. All right. I gotta get my second.
There you are. Gotcha. You're welcome.
Willie, did you take one for yourself?
No, I did.
I can totally hear Willie.
Who is that?
Shannon, your woman.
When I go home, I'm gonna show
She, she said she's your woman.
Is it Shannon?
It is.
What else would it be? Ladies, yes, why aren't you here?
Man, I was trying to come. It was oh, I love you so much. Hannah
Rule
and
62, you
Hannah
didn't
and
take yourself too damn seriously today.
Animal Rescue.
Oh,
No, my kid takes me too serious. Yeah, so I was trying to get there. And
okay.
then it became hell.
Well, I'm glad to see you on there.
Me too. I'm glad to be here.
Do you want me to get you one of these packets? I can get it to you this
yes.
week.
Yes,
I'll do
please.
that right now.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
Shannon.
I
You
love you.
slacking again?
No, I'm not. I got a baby. I got drama.
You
I'm
had
not-
a baby. How'd you have a baby in 1 week?
I kicked out my oldest baby and kept the younger baby.
I'm
Oh, okay.
Shannon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I'm so glad to be here.
She should have one from last year, but that's okay.
I do, but not the whole packet. You didn't give us that list.
No, you got the whole package now. Willie got it for you.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm muting myself. You know, babble through the whole thing. How do you do it?
I was sick yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, just a normal cold, but you get a normal cold now and everybody's like, you got COVID? No, you got a fucking cold. My throat's sore. Remember those before COVID?
Right.
Cold? Denise, how's Carla doing? You still there, Denise?
Denise is
Hey, Tom. What's up, pal?
Hi, Danny. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you.
Johnny just said you were slacking tonight. I don't know.
Oh, no. Johnny's all right.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dorothy.
Dorothy, no. Dan. Hey, Dan.
Hello, Danny.
Hi, Tom.
How you doing, dear?
I'm well, thank you.
Everything's still copacetic?
And water. My friend can go right through me, though.
maybe.
I drank a cup before and I ran right to the bed.
So you made it, John.
Okay. We got a couple minutes. What are we missing? Where's Jerry again?
They're at home on Zoom, they told me.
Yeah.
He texted me just now, said they were gonna do it at home on Zoom.
You go here, move over, see who else
You'll
is
wait. I'll get in my truck and come.
there?
Where's the pen, for the love of God?
People on Zoom, though.
Okay, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. I handed out some papers. There's some handouts here. If you didn't get one, they're in this white box. You can come up and grab one.
Oh, what's the Zoom?
The Zoom link is small w.
We got it right here. So you go there, I'll take a picture of it so I can have it too, and then I want you. Thank you. It's one of these, I think.
All right. So again, there's some handouts over here for the fourth step. Don't write on them.
Oh, damn.
Yet.
Can I get another one?
Yet. Don't write on them yet. Okay. And if anybody online needs one, send me a message with your email and I'll email it to you. But all I have is the sheets. I don't have the other papers that they got here. Okay. A couple of things to clean up from last week. My voice is kind of going tonight, so I got a sore throat. I know. All right, you get a sore throat today. Everybody, you got COVID? No, I've been vaccinated.
Sore throat.
My allergies are really bad. It might be that. Anyway, all right. So last week we had a couple of questions that were good questions, and I don't remember exactly what you said about starting them writing right away. The reason why that's not a good idea. And that's usually what happens. You get somebody, you get them up to the fourth step, and you tell them write down all your resentments, and then write down all your fears, and that's what you're asking them to do. And it's not that that's a bad thing, but I'm not sure they know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I'm pretty sure they don't really understand the stuff that we've covered so far, which is very important. The 3 basic instincts of life, what a resentment really is. Okay. So I think it's more beneficial to take your time and go through this work and then write, or even write as you go along. So that's just one thing I wanted to bring back from last week. Another question was, what did you ask them? What was the security instinct?
An example of emotional security.
An example of emotional security. So anytime your peace of mind or your spirituality is interrupted, that would be emotional security. Well, if you're emotionally secure, all right, you don't have no drama going on, and you're okay, and somebody interrupts that, that's emotional security that's been messed with. That's got to be checked. So we talked about resentment, and there's a few people on here that usually come here, not here tonight. I have extra sheets that I handed out, so you come next week, I'll give them to you next week. All right, so we talked about resentments, and we talked about resentment being the root origin of the word is to feel again, right? So what does that mean? Let's talk a little bit about that. When I go out in the daytime, when I leave my house, I start recording everything that's happening, right? What you say to me, how you look at me, what you do to me, even what you think about me. That's pretty powerful, right? That's some power there when I could understand what you're thinking about me. And I record it. I just keep this in my head. And then later at the end of the day, at nighttime or something, I play it all back. I know what that look meant. I know why they did that. I know why they said that. and I play it back again, and I play it, and every time I play it back, I feel it again. And every time I feel it again, I get a little more angry. So that's what a resentment is. A resentment is undealt with anger. It's okay and it's normal to get angry. But if you don't deal with it, it turns into resentment. And every time like I said, every time I think about it, I get more upset. Why? Because I'm selfish and self-centered. That's the root of my troubles. And we talked about what happens when you have that mode, that you're operating under that mode of everything's about me. You can't help but get upset at people and things. Okay. I told you from a couple of weeks ago that Bill used the words flawed and wrong. In 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? So many, many years ago, I looked up the word wrong because that's what we're after here. We're after the exact nature of our wrongs, right? So you might want to write this down to give you some definitions. I'm going to give you 3 definitions of the word wrong. There's more definitions than that, but these are the 3 that I picked out. The first one definition for the word wrong is incorrect judgment of other people. Incorrect judgment of other people. So wrong judgment. And we're going to find out a little later that that's exactly what a resentment is. Resentment is wrong judgment. The second definition that I thought was important is incorrect believing. These are all definitions of the word wrong. Incorrect believing. And we're going to find out a little bit later down the line that that's where most of our fears are. Fear is wrong believing. Okay? So wrong beliefs is a definition for incorrect believing is a definition for the word wrong. And the third one that's obvious is those things we do to hurt other people. Those things we do to hurt other people. Of course, that would be harms to others. So wrong actions. So wrong judgments, wrong beliefs, and wrong actions are all defined in the dictionary as under the word wrong. And that's exactly what we're going to look at, right? In step 3, we did a lot of looking at self-will, right? A selfish, self-centered individual will always display those 3 wrongs we just talked about. Wrong judgment, wrong beliefs, wrong actions. It's easy to spot somebody like this because they're usually madder than hell. Damn her, F them. They ain't going to do me that way. I'll show them. So a selfish, self-centered individual is scared to death. Once again, they can't depend on God. They can't depend on other people. They can't even depend on themselves anymore. So a selfish, self-centered person is always overdoing the 3 basic instincts of life. Always hurting other people. A selfish, self-centered individual always blocks themselves off from God. Blocks themselves off from God, from peace of mind, and any happiness. If we don't get peace of mind, happiness, or security, we're going to find it in booze or drugs because that gives us instant gratification. That's why I need to learn how to turn my will and my life over to the care of God in the 3rd step. The basic instincts of life drive me to do the very things that cause me to be robbed of peace of mind, security, and happiness. Now, self-will could never control these things. Only God's will can. So in the 12 and 12 in step 4, I think it's on page 42. If you have your 12 and 12, which you can look in there, otherwise I'll read it to you. I think it's page, 42. The bottom of the page on step 4, it says, step 4 is our vigorous and painstaking effort to discover what these liabilities, no assets, just liabilities, in each of us have been and are. We want to find out exactly how, when, and where our natural desires have walked us. If you notice, it doesn't say why. We want to look at how, when, and where our natural desires have walked us. Doesn't say why. The reason it doesn't say why is if you find out how, when, and where these things have walked you, you will understand why. If you knew why, if somebody told you why right off the rip, you wouldn't get it. So it's something that you have to discover for yourself. Say what again?
When I discover the how, when, and where, the why will become clear.
Yeah, when you did the 12 and 12 says we wanted to look at how, when, and where these things have warped us, right?
Mhm.
So it doesn't say why, because that's the first question us drunks usually ask, right? Why? Why? Yeah. And even before we got sober, I always ask God, why me, God? Why me? Why is a famous question for us. There's an interesting, when I work with people, and even in life, in everyday life, when I'm trying to get somebody to get to what's really happening, I never ask them a why question. I always ask them a what question. For instance, if you say, "Oh, I'm trying to get this, I'm trying to get this money, and I just can't seem to save any money," I wouldn't ask you why you want to get the money, because that would leave the door open for you to say anything about whatever you want. But if I ask you, what's important about you getting the money? Now you have to give me a fact. Whatever that fact is, I'm going to ask you what's important about that fact. Now you have to give me another fact. And in a matter of 2 or 3 back and forths, you're going to get to the truth. With why, you'll never get to the truth. It's a good tool to use when you're working with somebody or talking with somebody. You know, what's important about that, rather than why. And so I always find it interesting that the book didn't ask why. Oh, somebody asked me during the week, I don't think it was here, but somebody asked me during the week, how much are we supposed to write on the 4th step? And if you go to page 65 in the book, the first paragraph says, on our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? We were usually as definite as this example, and he gives an example. So if you want to know how much you're supposed to write, here's an example. Right there. And that brings us to our sheets. Okay. I want to go over the sheets with you. So I have this big copy. Now everything where it says here on your top left corner of your sheet, it says instructions for completion. Oh, that paragraph there, that writing is not in the big book. That's just instructions on how to use this sheet. Is it not on the sheets that you have?
It's in the back. It's on like third or fourth page.
Yeah, you got to go to your sheets, your resentment, your fears, your sexual conduct, your harms to others. That is not in the big book. Everything else on this page and the other inventory sheets is right out of the book. All of the writing you see in these columns is directly out of the book. So what this is telling you is that you're going to write from top to bottom rather than from left to right. So you write top to bottom. Who am I mad at? And just write their name down. When you get to the end of your list, when you get to the end of the bottom of your list, and you can't think of anybody else, you go to column 2. Now, if you wrote somebody's name in column 1, you know why you're mad at them. Shopping list answer in column 2, next to the person's name. And you go again, top to bottom. When you get to column 3, there's 6 columns there. Put a check mark to the 1 that it affected, or the 2 that it affected, or the 3 that it affected. Don't check every column. And the 4th column is you're going to put what your part was in it. So I'm going to give you an example. So in column 1, here, let me do this for you. And let's see if this helps. Let me get more. Okay. So my first inventory. Okay. So my first inventory in column 1, I had Mary. That was my first wife. Okay. This is my resentment list. Why was I mad at her? She left me and took the kids. You don't have to get, I came home 3 o'clock in the morning. The house was empty. The clothes were gone. You don't have to write on that. She left me and took the kids. What did that affect in me? There's 6 columns there. Well, it affected my self-esteem, my personal relations. It didn't affect my material security. It affected my emotional security. And it affected my acceptable sex relations. Because I ain't getting none. And that was the acceptable part, right? My wife. Okay. So column 4, what was my part in it? Well, I cheated all the time. We were together 20 years, never monogamous. I shared with you why that was, right? Not good husband or father. And then in column 5, I was selfish and dishonest, and that was the other 2 also. But you just want to keep it as more relevant in that column. Okay. So, but this is after I've done all the up top to bottom, right? So you look at this and you go, here's something that you learn when you get to the end of your resentment list and you get to the end of column 1. You know what you learn? You learn, damn, just look how mad I am at the whole world. All these people and institutions that I have down there listed, right? Then you don't realize how mad you are at everything and everyone until you get it written down. When you get to the end of column 2, you learn a good lesson. You learn it really doesn't matter who it was in column 1. It's really what they did to me in column 2. I could take Mary's name out and put anybody's name. If they left me and took my kids, I'd be mad, right? So it's not so much who it was as it is what they did to me. When I get to column 3, I realize, oh, look, this is what it affected in me. Now I get to column 4 and I realize, well, you know what? I'm pretty sure if I wasn't cheating on her and if I was home most of the time and I was a good husband and a good father, she wouldn't have left me. I'm pretty sure about that. So you get to learn something when you do this inventory. But I don't know if you really learn as much as you can learn if you didn't spend some time learning about the basic instincts of life and how we walk those and learning, understanding what resentment is, understanding what fear is, understanding the sexual stuff that we do, where's it come from? So that's important. And that's what we're going to learn in the resentment list. Does everybody understand that? And so that's the answer to how much do we write? Shopping list. Coffee, eggs, milk. No definition why. Okay. Married, left me, took kids, cheated, not good husband, not good father. That says it all. I had a guy that did the sexual inventory list. This is not a joke. This has really happened. And he wrote erotica when he filled out his inventory on the sexual list. I mean, he wrote, it was pretty damn interesting. It wasn't anything to do with the 4th step. But I read it anyway because it's pretty damn good, you know. He literally, I'm not making this up. You can't make this shit up. He wrote that he was banging his neighbor's wife on the kitchen table as the rain was beating on the window.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Detailed.
I mean, he was a little more detailed than that, but and I was just laughing when I sat down with him. I said, "You're writing erotica or a XXX book here. This is not." When we get to the sexual part, we're going to learn something, right? It's not about who's in my bed, but rather what's in my head. That's where the sexual inventory comes to play. Okay, but you'd be surprised what people put down on these things. You do enough of them with people, you'll come across a lot of insane stuff. All right. So he says, we went back to our lives, nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that the world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to fertility and happiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal. For in harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again, and with us to drink is to die. Now, this is pretty harsh. It's saying that resentment is infinitely grave. It's going to kill us. It's fatal. We're going to die from this. If you think about resentment and you think about what it really is, you know what it's like? Here's a good analogy for you. It's like attaching yourself to the person you hate the most in the world. That's pretty sick. You just somehow permanently attaching yourself to the person that you hate the most in this world. Why would we want to do that? standing here today, sober, I think that is so insane. Why would anybody want to do that? I have to remind myself that I did it all those years before I got sober. And a little bit in recovery too. But thank God I learned how to get out of that stuff. Because it is infinitely grave. It is fatal. It'll kill us. All right. So back on page 66, Bill says, if we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. So anger is something that we can't handle right. We don't know how to handle it. If we knew how to handle it, it would never become a resentment. And I want to tell you that while we're living the alcoholic life, resentments for people like us are 100% necessary. Have to have them. I'm not saying they're good. I'm just saying before we got sober, resentments are 100% necessary. We have to have them. Because if we didn't have any resentments, we'd be forced to look at ourselves. We don't want to ever look at ourselves before we get sober, right? So I don't have time to look at myself if I'm pissed off at Barry and Willie and Shannon. And I got all these people that, and I keep feeling again and again what they did to me. It leaves no time for me to take a look at myself. And that's why resentments are 100% necessary for the alcoholic and the addict. Have to have them. Does that make sense? Anybody got any questions about that? I know somebody's going to go around and say, Danny said we have to have resentments.
I am. Say that again, how important it is for us to have.
Excuse me?
Say it again, how important it is for us
It's 100% important.
to have.
What? Huh?
So why?
Because not when we're sober, but before we get sober.
So before we get.
Yeah, before we get sober. We don't want them now.
Oh, okay.
Now it's not. Now we don't want them. Now it's 100% that we don't want them.
You're saying that's like the main excuse for us not to be looking at ourselves.
Well, it's never even a conscious thought. It's never a conscious thought.
I mean, it's kind of blowing my mind. I'm thinking about it right now.
But think about it. As long as my mind stays busy thinking about what you did to me, and I don't know how you could do that to me after all I've done for you, right? But as long as my mind can stay busy thinking about you and what you did to me, I don't ever have to think about how I'm living and what I'm doing. Because there's more important things out there like what you did to me. And how am I going to get even? How am I going to deal with that? How am I going to make sure you don't do that to me again? How am I going to get my kids back? How am I going to get my wife back? Right? Whatever's on your list. That's what you're asking. How could this happen to me? Why me, God? Somebody should write a book. Why me, God? They probably have. So, does that make sense to you? So, resentment is 100% necessary. You have to have them. That's why what we talked about last week, when it says we're going to look at it from an entirely different angle, is that the resentment itself became the wrong. That I got a resentment, it's killing me, I got to get rid of it. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it doesn't matter anymore. And that's the entirely different angle.
So
Go ahead.
that would be a good thing to say, because I've worked with some people, not a lot of people, but a few, who, when we get to this point, and they say, oh, I'm not really mad at anybody.
Okay,
I did drugs for 20 years, but I'm not really mad at anybody.
yeah,
So that would probably be a good thing to point out.
yeah. And then you want to go back,
I've possibly done that.
and then you want to go back to page 65
Mhm.
to the last paragraph. Or before the example on the top of page and say, okay, I understand you're not mad at anybody, but I want you to write a grudge list and just whatever anybody ever did to you, what was it about? Your self-esteem, your security? Then at the bottom of the page, it says, we went back to our lives. Nothing counting but thoroughness and honesty. I like to ask people that are new to take a minute and think about, you're a few years sober now and you're sponsoring people. And somebody's brand new after 20 years of running and gunning out there. And they sit down with you and they say, I'm not mad at anybody. What would you say to them? You know what's really sick? I mean, we're individually we're sick, so collectively we're a room full of sick people, right? Well, you know what's really sick? Sitting in these rooms thinking, I ain't sick. I'm okay. That's pretty sick, right? If you sit in a room like this going, I'm not sick. I'm okay. I have never met nobody yet that had a great life and was everything was going perfect. And they woke up one day and say, I think I'm going to join AA. It's pretty sick to sit around in a room like this with people like us thinking that I'm not sick. How can I not be mad at anybody? All right.
Hi, Danny.
Yes.
So if we had that same scenario, could you say to that guy that after 20 years of running the county, say, well, is there anywhere in your life that you're not mad at yourself?
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's mad at themselves, but I'm not one of these people that think we should put ourselves down on our footstep.
I was gonna ask. Okay.
And some people,
Oh, I see.
some people teach that. I don't put myself down. If you come into these rooms and you ain't mad at yourself, you're not in touch with reality.
Yeah.
Again, nobody wakes up in one day when their life is great and goes, my life's great. I think I'll join AA. That doesn't happen. If you're anything like me, this is the last house on the block. And you tried everything humanly possible not to wind up here. And here you are. And so now that you're here, the first thing out of your mouth shouldn't be, I'm okay. That's what I did, though.
But it is.
This part in the story, freedom from bondage. Talks about that. She says her excuse was, sorry, but the reason she held it for all those years was it provided her excuse for her lack of education, her personal failure, her inadequacy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I hold on.
Yeah. But most people don't know that it's an excuse at the time. You know, they don't know. I'm staying mad at you, so I don't have to, go to get an education or do that. That's just the way it happened. Looking back on it, you see that's what it was. Because if you looked at it and saw that, then you'd have to be in denial to continue on with that.
Just reminded me of when I came into AA the first time. I really wasn't a cocaine addict, or I was a cocaine addict, not an alcoholic. But it was my brother-in-law's fault because he was a dealer and I could go get it from him whenever I wanted. So in my mind, when I got here, it was his fault as much as mine that I had a cocaine problem.
Yeah. When I got here, I knew I was alcoholic, and cocaine made me know that. Yeah. yeah, a drug is a drug is a drug. We don't, I only, my whole sobriety since day one, I've participated in AA and CA. So if I'm in a CA meeting, I'm a cocaine addict. If I'm in an AA meeting, I'm an alcoholic. And that's it. I'm not I'm not I'm a alcoholic and an addict. I'm not, it's wherever I fit in anyway. If it was Nose Pickers Anonymous, that's who I am. Danny, I picked my nose. Thank you. I qualify for all of these 12-step programs. Ah, that feels good. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
except in the book, they were doing drugs. They talked about sedatives. They talked about
Yeah.
morphine.
Yeah, Dr. Bob did drugs, Bill did drugs. Yeah. But AA has a singleness of purpose. I try to respect that in an AA meeting. You'll never hear me talk about drugs in an AA meeting. Some people I say, "Oh, you're speaking? Yeah, is it AA or CA?" I'm going speaking AA. I don't want to hear that. I like your CA story. A little more wild, right? It doesn't matter. It's about the feelings, and then, but you know, I'm not one of these people that if somebody brings up a drug in an AA meeting that stick to alcohol. I'm not. I keep my mouth shut. I just don't do that. It's just I try to respect our singleness of purpose. Now in Cocaine Anonymous, we have no singleness of purpose. It's all of the drugs. So you can talk about alcohol. You can talk about just alcohol. You can say I never did any drugs. I just drank, and you're just as welcome. And we have people like that. And so but AA has a singleness of purpose. Okay. So let's go back to resentment and talk about how that works. My mind is kind of like a store. Look at it like a store or an office with bureaus and filing cabinets and stuff. All my filing cabinets all the drawers are full. This one's full of fear. This one's full of guilt, shame, remorse, people I hurt. My job is to look at these things in the fourth step and in the later steps to see the truth about them, to do something about them, and to eliminate them. Remember that the thing is to get rid of them promptly without regret, right? And then I need to find out how to keep them from coming back. This doesn't all happen in the fourth step, but this is where it begins. So that replay machine that I have is bad. I got to disconnect that replay machine because, again, I'll just go home and I'll just replay all the things you did to me. My whole life, I'd say to people, I know what I got to do. Thank you. I don't need to hear, I don't need to hear you. I know what I got to do. I don't need your help. The truth of the matter is that you were telling me what to do through my resentments. Remember, I gave you the example of carrying the people around physically if I just let them in my head rent free. So I said, you own me if you're in my head rent free, right? So I have to find a way to evict you. And that's what this process will do. Okay, let's go back to the book, page 66. It says, we turned back to the list for it held the key to the future. And we talked about this already. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. So let's talk about that for a second. Fancied or real. What does that mean? Doesn't matter if you did what I think you did. Doesn't matter if you said what I think you said. Doesn't matter what that look was you gave me that I think I know what that look was. It doesn't matter. My reality is what counts for me. Right? We talked about that a few weeks ago, my paradigm. And so fancy it or real, it doesn't matter, same thing. But these things have the power to kill. How can we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. We realized that people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. Now, the rest of this paragraph is the resentment prayer. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. That is the resentment prayer. That story that you talked about in the back of the book, is that the story that has the pray for 2 weeks? Okay. So not that that's a bad idea, but that's not the resentment prayer on that page in that story back there. People quote that as being the resentment prayer. It's not. That story didn't come out to the second edition in 1955. And don't forget, the book came out in 1939, and the fellowship started in 1935. So for 20 years, they had a resentment prayer. And that's it that we just read. That's the resentment prayer. I've known people that use that prayer in the back of the book there, and it helped them. So I'm not saying you shouldn't, but this is the one you should use first. This is the resentment prayer. What? Yes.
Does it take time to get to where you can do that? Because my anger will take over and I'm still working on, to stand there and say, this is a sick man. How can I help him? But I'm really ready to rip his head off.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's the moment that you have to practice recovery in the moment that you need to practice recovery, right? You don't want to do it 2 hours later because you're going to be 2 hours madder than you were. So, yeah.
That's what I meant. I mean,
you got to learn how to pause and take a step back.
That's it.
Okay, and learn how to practice the tools. I forgot what I was just going to say. What was I saying before that? Question. Shit, I forgot what I was going to say.
Good catch.
Huh?
Real or imagined?
Real or imagined. Okay. So on my list here, right? Oh no, I was past that. So yeah, the resentment prayer, right? So by the time I get to the end of my resentment list, let's say I had 40 resentments. In all practicality, most of them should be gone just by inventorying them. For instance, and I look at this one, right? I've already shared with you that I'm positive. If I didn't do this, she wouldn't have done this. So that by itself, by the time I get to the end of this list, I don't hate her anymore. I'm not mad at her no more. I'm not angry anymore. Not 20 years later, but right then, very early in my recovery, I wasn't mad at her no more. I was the one, not her. In fact, I wonder how she stayed with me for 20 years. Right? So I realized, and I realized how good she took care of the kids. Thank God. So I owe her a lot. So just by writing it out, you should get rid of them. You might have a few left. So whatever ones you have left, you have to look again at your part, 4 and 5, and columns 4 and 5, and then do the resentment prayer on them. Now, I want to go over this list, this sheet that you have with you. I started doing it, I forgot. So the example on page 65 in your book is the first 3 columns here on your sheet. So on 65, I'm resentful at, that's column 1. The cause, that's column 2, and affects my, that's column 3. Only thing what I did with column 3 was I took the 3 basic instincts, and then I took the things that Bill talks about in the book: self-esteem, personal relations, material, emotional, acceptable sex, hidden sex, and I put them in there. Okay. Now, the first thing people ask me is, why is there column 4 and column 5? Because the book doesn't have that, all right? But it does. Go to page 67. Second paragraph says, referring to our list again. And then this is column 4, putting out of mind the wrongs others had done. We resolutely look for our own mistakes. That's exactly what it says here in column 4. So what this is telling me in the big book is referring to my list again. So it wants me to go back to the list. And then the next sentence says, where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Even though that's all together, I separated it and made a separate column for it. But that's exactly what it says in column 5. The reason I did that is because it's easier for us to analyze this later, and I'll show you, by having it all on one page. Instead of having 3 columns and then referring to my list again, what I did and what it and how I acted, like what defects made me do these things, and what I did, I got it all together on one sheet. So it's easier to inventory with this sheet. There's nothing different than the big book. I'm not doing anything different on this sheet that the big book doesn't tell you to do. Okay, so if anybody got any questions, yes.
So, I understand what you're saying about, like, if we can find some way where we place ourselves, right? We set ourselves up for, you cheated, that's what. For the harms that we truly did not, there was no provocation. We were hurt
Yeah.
without provocation. It's our part that I got hurt and I.
No, good question. I was getting there. I was about to cover that, but that's a good question.
So
So
what's column 1? Column 1 is resentment, right?
the whole sheet is resentment. The whole sheet is about resentment. The next sheet is about fears. The next sheet's about your sexual deviations. And the last sheet is about harms to other people.
Okay, so what is column 1?
Column 1 is who was it? Who did it? Like my example here, Mary. Now this is going to be people, institutions, or principles, not a choice. People, institutions, or principles. Now, what I'm going to answer your question in a second. What is an institution? If I hate Mary, that's not an institution. But if I hate women, that's an institution. So I would put the institution of women. I don't hate women. I'm just giving you an example. I have 3 daughters and 4 granddaughters. So. Column 2 is, what did they do? See, look at my example. Look here at my example. Mary, what'd she do? She left me and took the kids. And you have your resentment sheet in front of you? Read the column. Read the top of the column. Tells you. List people, institutions, or principles with whom you're angry. Column 2 says, I ask myself, why am I angry? And what they did to cause the anger. Everything's there. Okay, now back to your question. Hold on with that for a minute. Column 4 is very important. I think I covered this once already. You might not have been here, but I'll do it again because it's important. In column 4, I have.
Okay.
Thank you. If you, I'll take one if it's open now. No, I got. If you can honestly say you didn't play a part like this, like I did in column 4, because sometimes we have been victimized, no doubt. Usually it's when we were younger and something happened to us. But if you can honestly say you didn't play a part in column 4, then you can't leave it blank. You must write down how you acted and reacted to what they did to you. So in other words, let's say, for instance, you were molested as a child 2 or 3 times. 100% victimized. Okay? How'd you act and react to that? You never trusted a man. You never had open and honest sexual relations with your mate. I'm just giving you examples. So you have to think about this for a minute before you write, but it's all important stuff. How did I act and react to what they did to me? That's what you write in column 4. Does that answer your question?
Institutions and principles. You said institutions. Institutions obviously were also things like higher education, schools.
Yeah.
Judicial system,
Yeah.
courts,
Absolutely.
things like that.
Yeah.
Right? In principles, I'm looking at racism.
No, racism is not a principle. A principle is about, it's a moral, a value, or a belief. Now, if you believe that Asian people are dirty, that's your racism. Okay. So, but racism itself is not a principle. You're looking for what's your moral value and beliefs.
Give me an example of a principle. I'm at a loss here.
Were you here last week when I shared my principle?
Yeah, I probably should put my-
Okay, so listen, there's two types of principles. This is important stuff. One is important. One is generic principles. That means there's something that is common for lots of people, not just personal for yourself. The other is a personal moral value or belief that maybe others have too, but it's not a generic kind of thing. And I shared with you my principle, my big one, right? And that's a personal principle. What are some generic principles? There's lots of them, but it's a moral, a value, or a belief.
Share another one. Share another one. Share a couple.
Why don't you share one?
Well, because I just struggle. I mean, I overthink everything. So all that sense. So it seems like racism would be if I thought all.
Well,
Asians-
racism is if I think all black people are stupid. That's a principle of mine that needs to be inventoried.
Yeah, I don't think all black people are stupid, but I wouldn't even thought of racism had he not said that. But it's just to think of one that's only.
That's like saying racism is a principle is like saying religion is a principle. It probably is for a lot of people, but in what respect? You can't be that broad about the answer and just put racism. You have to be more explicit.
I really want to do this well, this part.
Huh?
If you go to college and get your business degree and pay your taxes, you're set for life. Have a happy life. What about something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. She said, if you go to college, pay your taxes, you're set for life. That is absolutely a principle. Yeah. Now, the question is, what moral value or beliefs of yours, your principle, caused you to be angry, caused you to be fearful, caused you to act out sexually, caused you to hurt other people? Those are the 4 columns that principle is going to go in. Which one? Okay. And it doesn't have to be exact. Just put it in any one. Just better just to put it down than to not put it down. But yes, that's absolutely a belief of yours.
Is that generic?
Yeah, that would probably be a generic one. Institutions, men. Well, some men hate women and some women hate men. That would be the institution of men and the institution of women. If I say I hate Deb and I hate Shannon, two examples, I love you guys. That's not the institution of women. Because I just said I got 3 daughters and 4 granddaughters. I certainly don't hate them. So I can't hate women as an institution. But some people really think they hate all men, and some people really think they hate all women. Some women think they hate all women, and some men think they hate all men too. It's not just back and forth. But if that's what you think, if that's a moral, a value, or a belief of yours, that's a principle. Write it down.
Races and nationalities are listed under.
Excuse me?
Races and nationalities are listed under
Yeah.
on your sheet.
On my sheet, what?
Yeah.
Under religions, not principles. Under institutions. Like a particular nationality.
On the front page.
Oh, on the prompt list.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's this prompt list is just to get you thinking about where your resentments, what resentments you might have. So it's just giving you topics. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left. Let's just finish up with questions. Who else got a question? These are all good questions.
I got a question.
All right, we ain't done yet, guys. Come on, guys. Got a question.
I'm working the steps this time on camera.
You working the steps on gambling?
Yeah,
Huh.
and I'm sex relation part when it comes to gambling.
The sex relation?
Yeah, I don't. Sorry. It's not clicking for me. Because it had nothing to do.
Yeah. If there's nothing there, there's nothing there. Don't spend, that's a good point. Don't spend hours trying to think of something. Who am I mad at?
Yeah.
What am I afraid of?
Pray about it. Find out.
Yeah. You know, but some of your stuff is going to cover material security and acceptable or hidden sex relations. Let's say you win a lot of money at the casino, you go out and get your babe, or 2 or 3, right? So that's hidden sex relations or acceptable sex relations, whatever goes on. But if there's nothing there, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
When you go over with your sponsor, he'll say to you or she'll say to you, "Why is there nothing here?" And they'll talk about it. And if you come, you don't have to waste time thinking about something. We're going to write down who we're mad at. Mike?
I'm in principle. I had a little deal there. Rule, man, or law. Married kids.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Just like
Okay. So here's what I want you guys to do. Next week, we'll finish up resentments and we'll talk about fears. In the meantime, take your sheets and make copies and start writing your resentments out. Okay. If you got any questions, bring them to here next week. All right. We're done. Thanks, guys. Same time, same channel.
Same time.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Danny.
Love you guys.
Oh,
Thanks,
Jeremy,
Danny.
you're there. Look at that. Hey, guys. Hi, Michelle. Kim. All right, guys. Take it easy.
See you next
Okay,
week.
thank you.
Next week.
Yeah,
I
next
can't.
week.